In this CineGuru MAX tutorial, we're going to take a look at one of the new features we've added, which are light markers. So as we know, GameGuru MAX has a dynamic lighting model, so that means that we can move lights around the scene and they kind of cast shadows from wherever they're at. So this is a point light now, and we can kind of move it around, and the shadows are dynamic. We can also make this a spotlight, and we have some control over the parameters, so we can change the beam spread of the spotlight, so the spotlight radius, and we can change how far that light actually throws, so we can change the light distance. And we can change these and kind of point them wherever we need them to. And actually that's actually stuck in the wall, so let's pull that back a bit so we can actually see it. And there are some behaviors that come with GameGuru MAX to be able to control certain parameters of the light. So again, down in color palette, if you go down and click on the constant light behavior, there are some options here to be able to get different effects. But we wanted to have a little bit more control when we came to develop CineGuru MAX, so we ended up developing a new marker called the light marker. So if you go to your CineGuru MAX folder and scroll down, and we'll add a light marker to the scene. Those of you who are sort of vaguely familiar with film gear will recognise that this looks a little bit like a sort of an Arri film light, albeit in yellow and red. Now it's important to note that the light marker itself, even though it's got this nice texture on that has a nice glow to it, it doesn't actually produce any light itself. What it does is it controls parameters for this marker, this actual light that we've created in GameGuru MAX. And the way it does that, quite simply, is you just have to draw a connection between the two. So by doing that, now some of the parameters you have for this light marker will now affect the behavior of this light. So if we go down to the parameters of the light marker, you can see we've got three here. One of them is L time, so that's light time. How long is the light on for? When it's activated, how long does the light stay on for? So in this case, it's 10 seconds. Then you've got fade. So when the light is activated, it doesn't have to come straight on. It could fade in over the course of, let's say, 2 seconds. And then you've also got int, which is intensity. So at the moment it's set to 100, but maybe you don't want it to be quite as bright or intense as that, so you could set it to, let's say, 70 and have it come on a little less brightly. To activate a light marker, it's pretty much like any other element in CineGuru MAX. You just drop in a CineTrigger zone or a CineTrigger entity, and you draw a connection using the visual logic system. And I'm also going to drop in some sand so I know where it is. And now, when the player enters this zone, this light will be activated. So it's going to start off, but then as we run into this zone, the light will fade on over 2 seconds like we've specified. And so there you go. And it will stay on for 10 seconds, and then it will go off. At the moment it doesn't fade out. Haven't added that yet. So this also works with focal points, so you can tell your light to point at things. So for example, if we drop a focal point into the scene and we say, actually, I really want the light to point at this specific spot of the wall over on the far right, all we've got to do is draw a connection between the focal point and the light marker, and now, regardless of the fact that the light marker and the light are pointing kind of towards the middle of the wall, it's actually, instead, now going to point off towards the edge. Over here. And similarly, you can also, just like with cameras, you can build up like a path of focus. You can do the same thing with light markers and focal points again. So our first focal point is over on this corner. Well, what if we wanted a second focal point over on the opposite corner? All we'd have to do is draw a connection between our first focal point and our second focal point, and our light will now, when it turns on, it'll start by pointing here, and it'll immediately begin swinging round like a spotlight and point over to this corner. And you can set how long that takes, once again, by changing the film time. So it's going to take 5 seconds to go from here to here. So you can see the path of that beam moves across, and when it gets to the end, it's just going to stay pointing there, because the light's on for 10 seconds, but the transition only took 5, so for 5 seconds it'll be pointing at this corner. So you can see how you could quite quickly build up quite an interesting setup where you could use focal points to point spotlights at kind of specific places. You kind of maybe like a sweeping spotlight or like a roving searchlight type effect. But we also added a little bit more control in the form of light nodes. So if we go and add a light node, that's this little one down here. It's much smaller. So a light node, I mean, it functions a little bit like a sort of a camera node, really. You can string paths of these together to move the light itself. So in fact, it's probably easier if I show you this without focal points to start with. So let's delete the focal points. So to begin with, our light is pointing at the middle of the wall, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a light node over here, draw a connection like this, and now the L time of the light marker, it doesn't necessarily have to define how long the light is on for in total, it's just defining how long it takes for the light to move to our light node over here. So in this case it's 10 seconds. I'm going to shorten that down, I'm going to make that 5 seconds. So it's going to take 5 seconds to get from where it starts to kind of over in this this corner of the wall over here. And you can see it moves across like that. And like I said, you can build up a whole path of these if you want to and have them kind of move wherever you want. So let's move our light marker over here somewhere. Let's have it kind of quite close to the floor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it do a little sort of like V shape. So I will move our first light node to the kind of middle of the wall almost and have it up quite high. Actually, it's not really a V, it's a sort of like a mountain shape, an upside down V. So it's going to go up, and then we'll add another light node which can be pointing at the wall, but again quite close to the floor. And by just drawing a connection between one light node and the next. So now, just go through it step by step. So the L time for our light marker is 5 seconds. So it's going to take 5 seconds to reach the first node, which is this. And then the L time for our node is 5 seconds. So it's going to take another 5 seconds to get to here. So it's going to be a 10-second move, 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down. And it's kind of going to go in a sort of a peak, a mountain peak sort of trajectory. So if you watch it, it's kind of heading up to the top of the wall, and then it gets to the top. And it's not like a sudden deceleration either. It kind of it does a nice kind of little rounded curve out of the top, which is quite nice. So you could see how this could be quite useful, not just for spotlights, but for local lights as well. So I might even see if I can sort of build up a little example now. This is going off script a little bit, but if I build a little corridor with these walls nice and close, I could place in a local light like this. Let's make it reasonably bright. Now, because it's a local light, it doesn't really matter where the light markers and the light nodes are pointing. So we can really just place them wherever we need. What's important is their position within 3D space. So what I'm going to try and do now is draw a connection between our light marker and our light. And once again, we'll set the L time to, let's go 3 seconds. So it's going to take 3 seconds to reach our first node. And our first node is going to be over here. Let's go there. And let's go 3 seconds to the next node. Just draw a connection between our light marker and our first node. Then our second node can be, let's go down here somewhere. Again, as I said, I'm not worrying too much about the orientation of these nodes. I'm kind of just putting them in 3D space where I think they should go. And then we can actually add another node over here. Let's just check. Okay, yeah, so L time, we'll set that to 3 again. So 3 seconds to get from our marker to our first node, 3 seconds to get from there to our second node, and then another 3 seconds to get to this one down here. And we did join those up, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Okay, so now all I need to do is activate this. So I'm actually going to draw a connection between our light marker and our Cine trigger zone. So now, tell you what, I'll move the zone closer because I actually want to be able to sort of see this happen. It's going to be quite quick. So now as we enter the zone, we will be triggering, we'll actually be triggering both lights because we didn't get rid of the connection on the first one, but we're not really bothered about this at the moment. We're more looking at this. We're going to watch a local light kind of fly down this corridor that we've made. And so you can see, you can actually see on the floor more so anywhere else, but you can actually see this local light is sort of moving itself. And you can see the shadows moving all over the place, so the actual position of the light is changing. And of course, not so much with local lights because, or point light sources, because they don't have anywhere that they can point. But with these moving spotlights, you can also have them tied into focal points as well. So again, with this sort of rise and fall one that we've just done, you could build a path of focus, or you can just have a single focal point. So for instance, if I've just dropped in a focal point there, now when the light comes on, it's not going to be pointing at this part of the wall and then rise up and point at this part of the wall. It's going to be pointing at this spot the entire time. So I should just be able to jump straight in and show you that too. So look, the light is pointing at the bottom of the wall. And even though the light's up here now and it's coming back down, you can see that it's always pointed at that focal point at the floor. So, quite powerful. Potentially some plans to develop this functionality a little bit further. We'll see how the community gets on with it. But yeah, it's one of the most exciting features of CineGuru MAX. And it's one of the sort of my favourite bits of GameGuru MAX really is the dynamic lighting. So yeah. Do experiment with this and feel free to kind of have a play because I think there could be some really cool opportunities with this feature. So that's it for lights, all things light markers. So now in the next tutorial we're going to be moving on to actors. So I'll see you then.